Video 111, The Ancient Past Life Stream of Josh Hayward, as explained by the ancient spirit tralaka here, flowing in spirit through the vocal cords of Groovy Elf. Now this is a very unusual writing by tralaka for this video, for the inner spirit of Josh as looked upon that very long live stream upon which can be viewed. It did not start in this seen universe that people can see in the night skies from the planet they live in, but he started from a par-ell universe next to the one that we know. Now that inner spirit that is Josh Hayward, the origins is with the domain, spoken of also in the videos by Backtoconstitution, who was a very good friend of mine, with the alien who was explaining to the nurse of her, with the alien who went by the name of Airl, where Airl and her species came from. Now this video, which was redone here by Backtoconstitution for his viewing audience, each person on Earth should listen to. It is called the Roswell Alien Interview by Backtoconstitution in his videos. Now, Josh, in that life, as he was part of a crew of 2,000 beings that was part of a scout expedition from the domain that would be going to Earth and the surrounding planets to gain information to take back to the domain in a different universe. However, things did not go as planned. For those of that 2,000 of those that came to Earth to do this extra sampling on the planet Earth and what was on planet Earth, Josh Hayward was number 436 of that particular scouting group. Though understanding such vast superior technology, they would end up trapped in this living universe. Some of them to this day are still reincarnating life after life on this planet Earth. Is this really a deliberate scheme by some other technology to keep those from the domain unconnected with their other universe? Or was this an unknown part of the workings of the living universe? In her first life, after being on a doomed scouting trip of the domain to Earth and its surrounding planets, Josh was to be located far into the Orion planetary systems as a snake humanoid, spending 2 long lives there, no pun intended. He stood at 8 feet and 10 inches tall, with very small scales on his body that had a mid-tone tan in complexion. His eyes were a riveting, shiny black that missed nothing. 3 long fingers on each hand and a double long jointed thumb on each hand. His feet having 4 toes apiece with a long claw between each one. Now, from early youth, in this first life in this living universe aspect, Josh had this very unusual talent for mechanics. He would work on machinery in his spare time, updating them first for his friends and later even for customers, who, though not quite understanding some of those upgrades Josh would give their machines, they did enjoy that edge it gave them. Josh would travel to learn from ancient masters on other planets in his younger years, with such an eagerness to learn more about the healing methods and manners surrounding it, starting on what would become a very successful business occupation of that of a healer. However, long down the road, the issues came into his healing career from elected officials who knew absolutely nothing about these ancient healing knowledge and things used within, instead of looking into the facts about What Josh understood, they instead labeled it all as this ancient healing and this knowledge as an illegal movement of practices and drugs, making Josh to move to a very far isolated outpost upon that planet that was nearly 1,000 miles from any city. That's way in the outback. The natural settings around him would end up working for him. It was of a semi-tropical with huge lands of thick, ample forests. The prairies, though, on the other hand, gave room for the twisting winds to play very much. The landing a space-going craft was such a nightmare 3 full seasons of the year until the bringing of springtime, when the winds stopped for solar months. It gave the aspects of nature much time to bud forth with intense degrees of blossoms, marking the beginning of the first season of the solar year. It was in that season that many off-worlders would come to understand when to come to Josh to receive ancient healings, as well as some even staying to be taught these ancient mysteries. The next 3 lives, though, Josh, though he was still on a local populated planet within the Orion planetary systems, he would be standing at 6 feet 9 inches tall, humanoid, with bountiful blonde hair, then in his long and winding curls down his broad shoulders, would love to tease in the breeze. Josh would be what you would call the mark of reaching childhood, that he would later be trained as a warrior, spending hundreds and hundreds of years as a warrior, upholding the law. Because the planet he had grown up on, being 5 times larger than Earth, had multiples of different variations of species living upon, who each seemed to think that their version of their law should be the over law for the planet, causing many times the small wars between the different species. For Josh and his fellow warriors, this is a perfect job security for their occupation. Though it was written that the humanoids were the first to settle that particular planet, nearly a full 15,000 cycles of the solar year early. Although here, understand, because of the huge size of that planet, many other groups did not know about other settlers until approximately the last 300 years. However, the grinding time of confliction didn't start then. It came 75 years in their past during a celebration where a being of a different species took to the stage of that event, and in true guttural languages, as bad as you can possibly imagine, insulting each and every variable of species of that planet and their representatives without fail. This date was to become known as the Bloody Injunction. It was here, at the Bloody Injunction, that the war zones started. Most of who went to that original celebration would never leave it alive, for they would be the casualties of that injunction. Being far enough outside of normal space trading, the well-known Alliance warriors, though they would never themselves be called to come with a scouting group to that planet to aid in settling the disputes. For Josh, those 3 lives on that planet would keep him and his fellow warriors very busy, keeping the borders safe, while also trying to get the different fractions of species to understand how it all started by simple trickery of wordings, not because of the differences between the different species in their variances, of looks and occupations and manners, but over time, this would aid in helping to create the peace for all sides. For in the next 4 lives, Josh would live in one of the Arcturus planetary systems, planets. He would be a human humanoid once again, but in his first life there, standing at 6 feet 5 inches tall, a bit shorter than others he grew up with. His forehead being a bit more strong in character, putting a bit of a shadow over his ocean light blue eyes, which had this set of very thin rings of copper in color with each one. You could only see from a very close distance. This had the tendency to mesmerize those around him as he grew up and throughout his long career in the sciences, as he worked long hours in developing different neutron drive systems for both land-based vehicles and spacebound. Now, Josh was a very firm believer in zero-point pollution, as many others have been working on for generations. Though the vehicles on that planet were now already mostly non-polluting. He, on the other hand, had these ideas for the creation of a new drive system that was so much stronger in its power generation, yet at the same time it still would have this deeper storage of that created energy without making the system bigger, but still being able to keep it smaller than before. The drive of Josh would consume his entire career as a scientist in his field of study. Josh had, since his early younger years, already designed an aircraft that could be used in land traffic as well as solo flights in the airs around the planet. This was quite a few years before he was an adult. Though the citizens on that planet have already used vehicles for ages already, the one Josh had built, which yet needed this power system in it, would serve to change the way transportation would become known on its use on that planet. The next lifetime in that Arcturus planetary systems would be that of a Draco humanoid, standing only at 7 feet 2 inches tall. Once again, a little bit shorter than some of his other friends. Though that Draco humanoid form had that Draco coarse rippled muscles under his skin, his face, on the other hand, was a much smoother humanoid in features. The hair on his head was a coarse black, though, flowing in the breeze to his shoulders. His eyes a radiant green in color. Some of his friends rumored they had a glow about them in the darkness of the night, though never really proven. Josh would spend his life as a building engineer, incorporating the flowing of water into the designs of many buildings and other fluid motion. It was well known that his designs also took care of the grounds around the building. He was very careful in his designs to use nature to create the energy for those beings who would be needing them when they were living in those buildings. Very mindful he was to keep nature into its own respect. Now, this would create for Josh the customer bases for designing nature-powered towns and even cities, to each of them within a circular form around them, the large allotted lands around those towns and cities individually kept natural to allow that energy generation from within it for those within the cities and towns. Now, in the next life, which is number 3 in the Arcturus planetary system, would be that of an androidic humanoid. This was really different for Josh. This was a very long life covering thousands of years, however. His passion was with working with designing energy distribution technology for those who would move later to live on local moons for their jobs. In his spare time, he spent studying civilization's scripts. Very unusual, though he enjoyed very, very much, in which to understand how other ancient civilizations, in the mindset, how they used energy, but more importantly, how they transporting what energy they needed for their uses. He stood at 6 feet and 11 inches tall. Most of the time, enjoyed wearing different abstract forms of clothing compared to those company business outfits he had to wear while at work. Now, in that fourth life, he was a snake humanoid, standing at 7 feet 3 inches tall. A mid-swirl of green and light browns covered his skin, though having scales were very hard to see from a distance. The hair on his head was a mid-brown, an inch and a half tall, in a spiked manner. Midnight black eyes. His jawline 2 inches in front of him, with smaller but longer nose creased on the sides. This allowed him to able to understand the aromas from his different environments around him, so he could do his job better. Josh would spend much of that life as a pioneer leader. Well, actually the lead scientist for the pioneer group he was with. He, though, looked at, the citizens in those pioneer groups, they looked at Josh as being this some sort of strange mystical being. For they said, over and over that he could reach down and pick ground up from around him in his hand, outside of the pioneer village that they were building, and taste a few grains of it while sprinkle it in front of him, a foot of him, in the light, in the breeze also, and then he would tell the pioneers what could be grown there and what needed to be done to grow other things needed. This astonished the pioneers for long, long times. However, Josh just never seemed to have the heart to tell him. He had a high-tech monitor in his upper lab pocket that sent the wireless information to his ears. Loose humor, he called it. Josh would then spend the next 3 lives in the Vega planetary system as a fighter pilot. First, as a need to aid in protecting outlying areas, both from raids and raiding times, from a wayward species of the mid-tall grays, who mostly didn't really need what they raided, though raided it many times in order to keep the small villages in their place and not thinking that they're going to grow outwards and eventually leave that small planet's surface. Now, growing up in a small village, Josh witnessed many, many raids from the distance, knowing a few places around the village, as the other children also knew, places to hide that were very sound. For when the sirens of the coming raid roared in the airs around them. As Josh became an adult, he and others had long time been training for pilots, but being allowed not even close enough to touch the hidden fighter crafts that were hiding within the mountains' huge caverns, miles and miles outside of their village, connected underneath by vast tunnels well built from the villagers long ago. Now, being a human humanoid at 6 feet 10 inches, he would grow into a dangerous love of both a fighter pilot and a hand-to-hand combat warriors. Both arms were tattooed with warrior codes. A mohawk on his head, which in a time of peace would have been instead this beautiful blonde head of hair, now shaven on both sides, the mohawk standing a stiff 7 inches tall. The sides of his heads, both of them, in small typeset having names tattooed of fellow warriors of his village, which upon had died during the different fights against those mid-tall grays. The following life, Josh would become a gray hybrid within the Vega planetary systems, standing at 6 feet 3 inches in height. His body tone a mid-tan with this slight undertoning of light gray, barely noticeable. Though being not overly strong, he was able to run very fast, and the movements with his hands in which he could work with in these quick motions were so precise, like a machine. His eyes, a darkness of black, which appeared to have no end when looked upon. At a young age, most of would not be able to stand yet. At that time, he was already learning to read very complicated books and use the technology in the home. By the mid-schooling age, Josh had already published 5 big electronic scripts at reading levels written that was best read by those of a college dean level of education. Very impressive. This electronic scripts that was written by him with theoretical applications for the coexistence of species having non-similar aspects between them. Those scripts, of which he wrote of later many more scripts, would later be known as the species bridgework, translated in many forms of languages in the Vega system, as well as the Pleiadian and Arcturus and so forth systems. Now, one of those major lines in those scripts was this: war skirmishes between species was the language of ignorance, of self-respect, of those leaders' own inner being, and of the other outer and inner beings of other variables of species. Ignorance harbors not peace in its scheming until the sacred energies, purity of lights, can enter within and diffuse one's own confusion. The darkness of anger cannot shine in the light, but the umbrella of it covers everything in confusion. This was the deepness of the writing of those texts by Josh. And this, however, would trouble him, though in many, many, many sleepless nights, as even though he was so well known, as he would spend the time looking up into the nighttime skies as the many stars moved across, always feeling like there was so much more he should know of times not understood even within this universe of the living universe. Pacing then back and forth many nights across this large, vast balcony of his home he had received as a gift, this large home with this balcony as a gift, just for coming to be a teacher at one of those main master level colleges. Now this balcony overlooked a deep valley beneath, with waves of clear blue and joining green rivers flowed. As he paced, the micro images would enter his mind of times in a seemingly other universe that was also split in many areas of ignorance, and its warring children's, as he would call them. He would shake his head, a long sigh escaping his mouth. Turning his head, he could see off to one side, during these really clear dark nights, this long stretch of flat land, which upon the space-going vessels, they would land of off-world species. Many of them were very powerful leaders. The burnt blue grasses gave in each night a slight burnt aroma within the night slight breezes. Many leaders over the time frame of 2,650 years, wow, would take the time to come and visit Josh to gain the understanding of peace, to be able to understand where things have went bad for that particular species and their civilizations, which is why they had came to Josh. Yet Josh would still spend many nights looking up into that night skies for his own answers from where he had come. In that next life of Josh, he would be in the Lyra planetary systems for the next 5 whole lifetimes. The first one as an androidic humanoid standing at a bold 8 feet tall. The tonings of his skin was so close to the other variations of human humanoids, some thought he was not even an android. His eyes, though a bit larger, were of a very light, teasing blue. His hair a mid-brown, with a perfect metrically cut hairline that was precisely 1 centimeter above his collar, which never changed. Having some curls across his forehead that teased with the breeze, he blended in well in his surroundings. It was in that life that Josh would be a transport team member, moving freight across vast areas of land on that planet in very long and tall, even in some situations, cargo vehicles that rode an inch upon the twin arced rails. The crosswinds, though, in the open lands that had no farms or villages on, were very brutal for in those different solar seasons on the planet for those that stuff being pushed down those high-speed rails. So Josh, he had this huge master's in education, in engineering, as well as applied science and 5 other fields of study, keeping everything aligned on those cargo vehicles and also interlinking them and then being on those rails were many sweat-inspired moments. But then again, he would have to be a human in order to have that experience, for androids didn't sweat. Well, not at least to what he understood. Now, the next life for him would be a whole new level of learning, enjoying both music and cooking. As he became an adult, this would get him enrolled in the higher training for both. He was very fortunate in that life to be able to get that education, to serve as a cook on some of those long space-going ships. Many of the different crew Josh had cooked for in that long career enjoyed his meals, no matter what the special was at mealtime. Josh would also spend during those meal times sitting down at a table in front of the cafeteria on a stage playing music for the crews. His different collected musical instruments that he entertained the crew with definitely showed his true mastery of music. Now, the cooking crews, many of them which tried to get on the team with Josh, the master cook Josh, because of their love of the music. Their love of the music. Josh also wrote that sold on the different local planets. In his later years, he transferred secretly with some members from the Alliance Warriors to being a military cook for a local Alliance Warrior base. He was having fallen in love. The love bug. He fell in love with one of the Alliance Warriors' commanding daughters. He fell in love with one of the Alliance Warriors' commander's daughters. This could be good. This could be bad. Let us continue. His future father-in-law, even though a very long-seasoned Alliance warriors that has seen many battles, was beyond words to say in any language of which he knew. When one clear sunny day at the base when Josh appeared both as the master cook for a large assembly of alliance warriors and multiple leaders from local planetary system who were at odds. No, the leaders were at odds with each other, agreeing on all sides, though, all the way across the room, that this incredible meal that had been made for them, that was brought before them, this was beyond explanation. It was just melted in their mouth. They had such enjoyment eating this meal, and this was a very elaborate 10-course meals. Moments later, in front of the assembled area, curtains rolled to the left and to the right, the back curtain rolling upwards. As the lights began to glisten all around the stage, like falling little teardrops of crystals, there was Josh sitting behind this huge ancient instrument, and to the left of him, standing at nearly 12 feet tall, a different part of the instrument that was crystalline. To his right, likewise, that crystalline aspect of instrument standing 12 feet high to the other side of him, with the curved flat one between the two that he sat behind. It was here. It was truly right here. Josh, the master cook, began playing this astonishing musical instrument that was so ancient. It just left everybody in the assembly breathless, in awe. To even the Alliance warriors, they were breathless, many of which had their entire careers in which they've been to many different worlds not known by regular citizens. They were awed. The level of inspiring music Josh played silenced the warriors, also in the midst of their meal. Each note seemed to hang in the defiance in the airs around everybody, its sweet influence penetrating everything. Time itself hung in stillness during this playing of this machine. It was more than 20 minutes, 20 full timeless minutes for that very first music number to finish. The backlights behind the instrument, behind his back, began to lighten, showing for the first time who that musician really was. That went into this machine, that went into this brief moment of peaceful hibernation, a very strange feeling in the air. The Alliance commanding warrior eyes seemed to like that of beach balls. Picture this well-known old Alliance warrior commander eyes being as big as beach balls as he's seen who that musician really was. Why, it was that serious boyfriend of one of his daughters. He knew that it truly must have been of some crazy tactics by some of those warriors in his command that somehow got this master cook brought to his base, which he knew nothing about. For he was not just truly a master cook, this Josh, but this master musician of many ancient studies of music from different planetary systems. It was a solar year to that date. Later, Josh was joined in ceremony to one of the commander's daughters. It was this ceremony upon which I warn you, may become very emotional. The commander insisting, though, that Josh would be within the ceremony, not playing it. For this would not be for this mysterious Josh. For the first time in all the different ceremonies, nearly countless that Josh had played for with different instruments, as well as cooking for him, and this incredibly seamless, endless lunch times that he made stuff for the Alliance warriors and political leaders for both peace talks and resolutions. It was at that sacred ceremony, as Josh would play this intensely ancient and huge musical instrument, that large piece to the left and the one to the right, for the first time ever seen, detached from the main floor piece, which was larger than the size of a double-sized grand opera piano, that Josh sat behind playing this ancient sacred music. Those two pieces, one to the left, began to the right, began to levitate on each side with this visual scene rippling of the airs below that had different bandwidths of visual energy the people could see. Astonishing this was to the ceremony crowds. The commander dropped his sacred script from between his hands as he looked in awe. Those two pieces of that instrument kept rising, one on the left, one on the right, in height above that huge crowd in front of the stage area. The visual vibratory rings of energy coming from those two pieces kept increasing in size on that large stage. At the end of that piece of music, those two pieces started to move in a parallel manner to the stage, hovering 12 feet above. Now, Josh began to touch sensitive points in front of him on this instrument he was playing. As he began playing again, the two separate pieces of the instrument began to move outwards from the stage, from above the stage. Many of the different crew would just be in just such true awe while these two pieces rose upwards until 20 feet above the ceremonial and this huge crowd, moving upwards until everyone below was between these two pieces. A whole new set then of harmonics within the music began to come from those hovering instruments, or parts of instrument. The airs above and between each in the crowd seemed to hang in the balance between each note of this ancient music. The actual time on the tower clocks actually stopped their movement. Josh then started playing this piece of music, which was theoretically reasoned later to not have been heard in probably 100,000 of solar years. Wow! A level of such powerful beauty, this time itself honored by stopping for the playing of this music. As those twin tower clocks remained motionless, Josh played on for quite a while also moving different hidden sensor switches on his board as he was playing the music. Standing up from that huge instrument, walking to the front of the stage, that mysterious instrument seemingly got a life of its own as it started to play on and on. It gained a life of its own, it seemed. And the people in the crowd, they were just, once again, they were in awe. They're like, this thing's playing on its own ideas. Josh came to the edge of the stage, near the middle steps which led down to the crowd. He got down on one knee while in this very exquisite outfit, and he looked toward his bride as she stood up on the other side of the stage with this such perfect beauty. She looked in this ancient design dress that had no time upon it, a true mystery of its own. The commander, still in such awe, this Alliance commander, and this such awe of Josh playing this music, the surrounding Alliance warriors, one on his left, one on his right, moved to aid him in standing. There was drawing a bit of attention. One of them reaching to the ground to pick up that ancient sacred scroll and handing it to the commander. "Come on, Commander," two of them said in a whisper as the two slowly started to push from each side. The commander headed toward that stage. Coming to his senses then, the commander then started taking those ceremonial step movements until he was next to the stage, walking directly to the middle. Beneath him, an air-driven lift lifted him up 6 feet. As he was then turning to the crowd upon that platform, a few tears managed to appear on his age-driven face. This tears from both sides of his eyes on this long war-driven, war-solving warrior. He looked tall and proud and didn't give a care if anyone saw him in tears. However, he dropped the script again as he began to talk, forgetting the script altogether. This is what he had to say. "For the peace for all variables of species who strive to become better, I have fought battles for. I look down very long jawlines of that some beings may even call monsters, and have witnessed such impossible to comprehend beauty of the living universe and its motions. Yet it is today, right here, today, though we are all witnessing a joining of an individual beauty, this beauty of two beings like I have never seen before, and will most likely no one here today will ever live to such an ancient age to be able to see such a beauty again being joined, and the music in its influence. I present this daughter of mine to be joined with Baranak, the master cook and master musician of ancient study." The tower clocks, still without motion. The commander went back to talking, tears coming more readily from his very aged face. Beyond that music instrument, which had seemingly kept playing in its own inspiration, a being began to materialize on the stage, sitting upon the seat where Josh had stood up from long moments before. The ancient Draco dragon, 12 feet in height, as he was sitting down on that chair playing that incredibly ancient instrument. The crowd was motionless in awe once again. Different colors of visual, vibratory rhythms began to move through the air between those large hovering two pieces above the crowds of that musical instrument. Then they grew larger as they went farther apart, the crowd being so mesmerized they flowed like ribbons until everybody was sitting down with nobody questioning what was going on. The eyes of the crowds, once again, they looked like beach balls in awe of such incredible beauty in this mysterious ancient ceremony. The dragon seemed to disappear as the music came to this quiet part of the music, as Baranak Josh, as he is otherwise known, Baranak and his bride came together in the center of that stage, facing each other only a foot apart, reaching upwards in the air until their hands moved, until the very tips of their upstretched fingertips met together. Each their fingertips slid in slightly between the other's fingers. The music changed now, the toning, well, at least, into this harmonic that was bringing those hovering visual vibratory rhythms of energy. Now they are moving towards the stage, each of those two becoming joined. Now, it was this intense visual thing that was going on. And as those two were getting joined in that ceremony, and the energies was coming back towards them, collecting behind each one of those two in two growing towers of this collective energy. Now, Baranak, Josh, and his bride began with their hands still interwoven above their heads to turn in their own circles in this dance of two, one clockwise, one counterclockwise. They turned slowly at first as the ancient music player began to play faster. The rhythms of vibratories on each side began to merge around each one of them in many myriads of colors, while other visual vibratory rhythms took to different forms upon each of their own. This ancient dance of joining had begun. The turning in these sacred circles, Baranak, Josh, and his bride started to move around this large stage while still in that sacred circle dance, hands up in the air to the furthest reach while yet intertwined with each other's fingers in that unusual position. That motion on that stage they went began to turn into this understanding of sacred geometry formations. The ceremonial dance continued. Now, the two officers, that is, one to the left and one to the right of the commander, climbed up into that 6-foot tall platform the commander had been standing on, and pushed from the left and to the right to hold that commander standing straight during this ceremony, for even the commander was getting lost in his awe and was not being steady upon his feet. It was not until some time later, when that sacred dance was seemingly coming to some sort of a stop, back in the middle front row of the stage, the bride coming to a near stop 4 feet above the stage. She was hovering in this manner as the vibratory rhythm, these rings, these visual vibratory rhythms, they started to form underneath her, giving her this look of floating in the air. The ancient dress resting on that female in such an incredible way that gave her the intense look of looking like perfect hovering above the stage. The 4 feet between being of the bride and the floor of the stage, and this space of that 4 feet was changing in colors once again as her fingers released from Baranak, Josh, as he came to a stop in a likewise manner also. The vibratory rhythms below him also changing colors, but different from hers. That pulsing, it was like a pulsing motion these lights were moving, until the colors both came to the exact combination of colors, slowly then vanishing as both the bride and Baranak, Josh, lowered to the floor. Now, underneath them was a platform of energy, formed and materialized, and it was lifting him up once again, but in those seating positions until they were 8 feet above the stage, in that semi-hovering looking. That stage, otherwise cleared of energy now, except for that ancient dragon, still semi-manifest behind that ancient mystical instrument. Only little dancing, teasing rhythms that manifest into small dancing crystals of tears started hovering above the crowd as he played these other pieces of music. It was then the commander found his voice once again and said this: on this solar day, the commander to say in this mid-tone voice, it truly is my most humble honor and authority to authorize this most ancient joining of my daughter and Baronoc, Josh, to the family of oneness, of bond. You may now kiss the bride. As the two became, into this kiss, one of the officers, that is, the one to the left of the commander, lost his footing on that platform that the commander was on, falling downwards into the assembly of a row of female alliance warriors, knocking a few to the ground in a sprawl of hands and feet movements. Quickly they were getting up to get back, they unscrambling their situation and getting back into the well-known alliance warriors formation in perfect row and looks. The commander nearly tipped off that platform, save for the other officer, the one on the right, that got a firm grip to keep that commander in that formation standing, minus the one on the left who had fallen. Now, that ceremonial kiss, the ceremonial ancient kiss, that is, of those two on stage, started a whole new, though faster and excited music and energies flowing around the stage during this sacred time of ceremonial kiss. The ancient dragon, for the first time, fully manifested, playing with such boldness and excitement that the ancient musical instrument was, this music was so intense, and he was wearing, that is, the dragon, wearing this ancient robe with different rows of sewn in, it appeared to be sewn in, crystals that each pulsed within their own rhythms, like their own little intelligences. Smoke circles coming from the dragon's nostrils as he played this incredible music, though these smoke circles would hang in the air in perfect circles as they moved across the airs of the stage. The commander turned to face the crowd, saying boldly, while leaning against the officer to the right of him who was holding him up, he said, "Into the feast we go, alliance warriors and guests alike. You are dismissed into the festivals." The platform beneath the commander lowered to the ground as those manifest crystal tears, remembered, that were hanging in the airs above the crowds, fell upon their own gravity onto the beings in those moving crowds. In this brief nanoseconds, as these different things fell on those beings, they all landed individual as rose-shaped splashings upon each being. Everybody began this incredible cheering for the newly joined. It truly was a time of harmony. And it was just a puff of smoke later from where that ancient dragon had been playing, and he seemingly was gone, although that music on that strange instrument kept playing for nearly a full week later without repeating any of those ancient of songs. Truly, Baronoc, Josh, it would be the best of lives. Now, Josh would have two more lives in that Lyra planetary system. The first as a snake humanoid. He would stand only at 5 foot 2 inches tall, a bit short for his area, though very much humanoid in form. His deep, piercing green eyes would stand out as he examined everything he worked with very closely in his science laboratory. Growing up, he had enjoyed going to the races with his girlfriend, from very young child years, to watch the magnetic drive hovercraft racings. Those racers, they went in this double figure 8 in front but below the stands, and this would continue for those two. 12 solar cycles, long solar cycles, by the way. It was in their early adulthood when there was this horrific crash at the races that was sent a long yet thin piece of a power plant of one of those racing hovercrafts straight into Josh's girlfriend's body, slicing her in two full pieces. This spelled, without mysterious reasoning here, this would spell the end of any romance for Josh the rest of that particular life, as he dedicated his science inventions to that girlfriend long ago who had died on that so fateful days when they were still children. He would in that life, however, create multiple different, totally new power systems to power out the different public transportation hovercraft vehicles as well as cargo, dedicating even a whole new line of magnetic triple sealed, triple drive ring engines for racing. His life had been filled with many, many creations from that lab of his, though he would retire one summer night from that life that he had been in as he sat in this custom made by him hover chair he had made long, long ago, as he was gazing into the star-filled sky into the sunset. The last shown in ancient live stream that Josh was having another life, though. His next life that is still recorded was that also of a snake humanoid. Standing at 7 feet 3 inches tall, snake humanoid, having this mid-green tone to his tightly though smaller scaled skin. The eyes an unusual ocean blue in color. One could see but oceans of emotions flowing within the mysteries of his eyes. This was a very passionate life for Josh, growing up on the Lyra planetary system once again. However, this time he had a larger family who enjoyed both long walks in nature and singing together and dancing at many, many festivals. Now, but decades into his adulthood, he later would take over the family business, which built these homes in these custom manners with this art-like in their formation. Though never getting the time, rather taking the time to go off-world in vacations, he would still have a very full life with a mate and children of their own. It was here, though. It was here. Once again, Josh would be found in the very depths of the night sky, looking over this rail of a porch, the one at their home, looking into the night sky, pondering seemingly endless, impossible questions he asked of his origins as he looked up in the skies. He always had this feeling there's something else he should know, a history that he has been robbed of, that he has been forbidden of, perhaps even, as he looked into the night skies. His mate, though, well, at least according to the neighbors, his mate would join him many nights at his right side, putting her left arm around him and also sharing that view of the skies. They were growing years, many, many years, to a very old age together. But yet, in his mind for Josh remained, where of his origins. This here is the ancient spirit, Tralaka. As always, my friend, understand that you truly are so much more than that of just a three-dimensional human being. The knowledge which has come through for so many of you, well, is going to be coming through for so many of you as you open up and blossom into understanding of your inner spirit and your outer expression working together, will enter an era onto this planet has never witnessed before, the beginning of truly a golden era of the planet Earth. This is the ancient spirit, Tralaka. Good night.